numbers of constituent member councillors here. But Councillor Gardner's managed to join us and navigate the car parking issues. So we are now legally quorate. We'd started the meeting, gone through the initial items in the agenda and rearranged the order a little into the point of taking the US SPF item first. So we're part way through that. So anything else I need to note with the members of the public? Sorry again for the difficulties that we've had, but we are now able to continue with yourself, Lucy.
No problem. Thank you. So I think what we need to do over the next 12 months is really identify where any funding that might come down may add value. We've got a number of other funding streams where potentially those activities could overlap. So East Midlands investment zones, there's growth hub funding, is the adult skills fund and maybe other investment funding. So I think that in this transition year we want to try and maintain the status quo, but really look for April 26 to do a review through our consultation process around what these key themes might look like for East Midlands Combined County Authority and how we deliver those for the best value for the public, utilising the multiple funding streams that we've got available and then also asking for money via the comprehensive spending review. Just to give you an idea around how it was delivered by the district and borough councils in the past, Communities in Place was delivered at 40% of the budget, supporting local businesses was about 40%, and People and Skills was 20% of those budgets. But there's no reason why we need to stick to those elements. If things have changed on a local basis, there's no reason why local places can't reallocate budgets to other emerging priorities that might be happening. We've had very limited information about the new way of reporting as a lead authority. We are working on some mechanisms in the background. We have had the allocations that have been delivered to us, because obviously the amounts are there. Those are in the board paper on the 3rd of February. And we're going through some of those planning conversations with our partners at the moment to try and make it as speedy as possible to maintain some of those projects if they're going to continue to be funded for next year. We're also working in the background on delivering some of those regional commissions with our constituent council partners and also looking at going out to market for a couple of those areas as well. So we've done, last week and this week, we did some engagement with the local authorities to try and inform some of their planning processes. I'm working on a timeline based on the information that I've been given by MHCLG. I'm also working on some forecasting tools to enable us to move as quickly as we can once the money lands with us. And some of the processes for that are we have to deliver a forecast, which we won't be able to do until the 1st of April, because the tool won't be available from MHCLG until then. That will then unlock the ability for it to be signed off by that government department and then for the money to come to us. So we're already in a deficit situation which has been created by what's happening at government level, but we are talking to our councils, district and borough councils and constituent council partners in order to try and make that activity happen as quickly as we can do. Is there anything else that I need to add, Nick?
Thank you, Lucy. I think that's thank you. I think that's very comprehensive. The only other points I would make, just to reiterate, I was going to raise some of these in the budget report, is that there'll be about £25 million, roughly, going out to the local authorities in terms of commissioning. That's taking off the central commissioning that we will do, which is about 2/3, I think, of the funding that was previously received. So it's a relatively higher amount than the national amount. And again, I think Lucy mentioned that's because the Mayoral Combined Authorities have been given extra funding extra capital funding to put in place. As was mentioned previously, there's a different revenue capital split, and that may cause some issues, but again, we're working through that but with constituent councils and other councils across the region. And also to mention as well that, that we are flowing through the ability, should they wish so, for any council who gets the funding, to use 4% of that to cover management and administration costs within their authority as well. So those are probably just the other points, just from a financial perspective, if that's okay. Thank you.
In that case, then I'll throw it open to members of the committee, because whilst we hear that the amount available is reduced and the priorities and criteria have changed, but a little bit, but there are some of these partner organisations delivering services that are virtually dependent on this funding and need to get the money as soon as possible, which is why we recommended at the last meeting that we use reserves to enable that to happen. So for me, there's no clarity on who, when, where and how this funding is going to be distributed to give those partner agencies a solution. So Abby, I think you were first.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Lucy, for that. I think, obviously, I'd express my disappointment that the fund has been reduced fairly significantly from national government, because it has proved to be an extraordinarily useful and flexible tool at borough and district level particularly. I appreciate we're here to talk about EMCCA and not the districts. I appreciate the need to top slice some of it. I think my question is the capital revenue balance. I understand there's some merit in it, because there is a danger sometimes with these funds that ongoing revenue costs of organisations just get diverted to wherever there's a revenue funding pot available and doesn't necessarily support the strategic objectives of the fund. But to what extent is there some flexibility transferring between capital and revenue, or is that fixed? And if it is it fixed the same from the top down, or are there options at a local level to change those intervention styles?
The directive from EMCCA is that we can convert revenue to capital, but not the other way around. The capital split needs to be maintained. And I do think that might cause us some difficulty, but I'm also getting some positive things back from county councils to say that they might be capital heavy. So there might be a way that we can jiggle that revenue around if it's more in need in certain areas than others. So I am looking at that at the moment, but it's very difficult to do that when we don't know what the payment structure is going to look like, and those types of things. But if we can move revenue to where it's needed, then we will. But how messy that gets, I don't know. It might be too difficult for us to make that happen. We'll see.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Chair. That was really quite encouraging, because I think given the smaller pot and still maintaining the amount that's going out to local authorities is excellent, and being able to top slice for regional initiatives as well. Really just a question on how you're liaising with the local authorities, and how they, and is there a process defined for them putting forward initiatives, proposals, and then how will you be program managing those initiatives ongoing?
Can I don't know what I did there. Okay. We're working on the programme management of it at the moment. I think that we don't necessarily have the capacity and resource to monitor very closely at EMCCA at the moment. My team is building. So there's a couple of advertisements out to actually support me in doing that. I think that once we've done the delegations, and that's been agreed by the board on the 10th of February at the board meeting, and the allocations will be made public once all papers go out on the 3rd of February. Once that's been done, I think that it will be for us to trust those districts and boroughs to take the projects forward that they think are the most appropriate, as long as it fits within the strategic framework that's been set by government. we will be an information gathering and reporting agent around how that's going over a period of time, and we may decide if capital isn't being spent that there's a way that we can draw that in to potentially spend it on projects that might be short of capital elsewhere, or and we can manage that over the period of the 12 months that we've got. But I think that we would be asking those districts and boroughs to monitor and performance manage those at a local level, rather than us taking a strategic overview, because we don't have the capacity and resource to make that happen at this moment in time. Hopefully within 12 months' time we'll be in a better situation to look at managing some of those programmes. The regional commissions obviously will be programme managed by us, and we will set up the correct governance arrangements to encourage as many of our local partners to be involved as are able to do that. So, yeah, I think that we will be trusting our local authorities to deliver that, and we will be a central place for information and reporting to government around how it's going and if there are any risks or concerns. But I think that's probably where we are at the moment.
Does that mean?
Sorry.
Does that mean that you will not be evaluating initiatives put forward by local authorities? You'll be leaving it to them to decide how to spend the UK SPF funding?
I think we'll have to have a cursory eye to make sure it fits the national framework. So there will be some oversight, but I don't think we'll turn people down as long as it fits within that strategic framework. I don't think that the projects will be overly scrutinised. We've been told by EMCCA that there isn't any evaluation that is required for this transition year. If we choose to do some evaluation and we want to share that with them, then they would be happy to receive that. I think it's important that we keep an eye on what's going on in order that it can inform future provision. But I don't think there's going to be any formal evaluation of any programmes that we want to do. I mean, I think if there are good programmes that come forward and we think that there might be some regional benefit to developing those into regional programmes, then obviously we will try and do that. But I don't think there's going to be any specific performance management around the delivery of those funds. It will be a 6-monthly report around how's your spend going, what are your outputs and outcomes look like, are they roughly on track? If that's the case, then we'll do the same thing at the end of the year with the actuals and just make sure that we're reporting that appropriately to government. Is that okay?
Sorry, just to be perfectly clear, so this is the transitional arrangements for the transitional year. Obviously in 26 going forwards, when we are the relevant body, then the arrangements will be different, and there'll be need to be planning, and your staff will be in place by then.
Yes, 100%.
Okay.
So we will go through a consultation exercise around what the future of business support looks like, certainly from business support. With Adult Skills Fund, they're already doing that consultation around how money is going to be spent on skills in the local area. And if there are areas that needs to be covered by SPF, then obviously we'll pick those up at those points. But yes, we will go through a really clear consultation and planning process for April 26, involving obviously all of our constituent members and local partners and stakeholders.
And I think we'll need, Tom, if you can make a note to bring it back for feedback and update end of this year, really, before, in terms of your planning in relation to April onwards, 26.
We would hope to have a plan in place by the middle of the year in order that we can commission, because we've got to do some commissioning and tendering if that's the case on regional programmes.
So if we say the autumn, you should be able to
100% in the autumn, maybe in the summer meeting. Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll say autumn and then we'll know where we're at. So back to, sorry, you wanted to come in, yes. I'll bring you the same then.
Yeah, thank you. Just for clarity, because I know earlier people were asking when we will get the exact allocations. I think Lucy mentioned that there, but just to clear that through, on the 3rd of February, we'll be publishing the papers for the board, and those published papers will have the provisional allocations in subject to approval.
Yeah.
And that will be approved then on the 10th of February, hopefully a board through there. Timing hasn't worked out perfectly for this committee, but can I ask the monitoring officer if that's okay? Just my assumption is that once those allocations are published, if any member of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee wishes to make some comment on those, that they could do so, and we will then report that back to the board on the 10th of February, is that correct?
Yes, confirm that that is correct. That's a conversation we've had, and we've set that out obviously in the paper today on feedback on board papers, due to that anomaly on the calendar timings.
Yeah, just getting some clarification then on the principles. So the split before was 40-40-20.
Yeah.
And, you know, obviously it's feedback from everybody here, but I think it was pitched about right at 40-40-20. It's over a 3-year period. And the cost of living crisis, etc., around that communities grant is the ones that I think is really closest to a lot of the district areas. Secondly, it was done on a pro rata population fraction calculation, what the population is divided by the thing times deprivation indices in there. So that's the second question. Is it going to be calculated using that same criteria? And the third one is, well, it's back to this capital and revenue, because there's a sort of criteria about schemes being sustainable. You're trying to create something so, especially on the community grant side of things, that things you're doing help the local people sustain it past the end of the funding. So that revenue part to achieve that is really, really important. And that's why I was hoping that EMCCA, not just being able to just copy exactly what's happening from central government, because that was the feedback last time. So if when you pass it across to EMCCA, you can't tweak it or change it to make it suit I understand why you don't want to be spending it all on revenue, but it wasn't in the right proportion last time, and that's the feedback that I would give, and hope that EMCCA could actually, you know, change that and recognise that. So that's the other point. And with regard to the audit of it, it's like, so government you're still reporting back to government, but in a far more kind of slightly less officious way than it was from before, or not, question mark. So again, I say, but that's my other point. If you're saying you're devolving, but then you keep exactly the same rules in place, you're not actually achieving anything. You're just passing it from one big organisation to a smaller organisation, but you're playing by the same rules. So,
absolutely, Andy. Sorry to stop you, but we've lost Councillor Smith, so we are now no longer quorum in terms of constituent members. So we're going to have to close the recording again, Tom. Apologies, but we stopped it.